commitment in other contexts, cultural concept of him. Being in other cultural contexts, he start to listen what I believe is the Holy Spirit to talk to him. And somehow, for accident, he find in the presence of God. Moses faced enormous challenges in leading the Israelites through the desert. He not only managed their physical needs, such as hunger and thirst, but also their spiritual and emotional anxieties. As similar as health professional, often we face challenges that require not only our technical scientific knowledge, but also a deep empathy and commitment to the patient's holistic well-being. And sometimes, let me try to connect. I say like we are like little Moses because we face sometimes a disconnect of our own community in the path to get to be a health professional. My first encounter in this field was when I was 9 years old. That I have a huge accident, and I see all the effort of my family and doctors to save my life. I say this because sometimes I have received testimony in other Mennonite communities, students of medicines and new doctors, nurses that belong to a Mennonite community. They live like in Belize or Mexico. Thus, they have the more closest community that I have and learn from them. Many of these people, these brothers, they not study beyond third grade because the natural belief of our conservative Mennonite communities is that they don't need more studies. So I believe we are revolutionary when we chose to continue studies to serve. Many people in these communities, they not feel the need to continue the studies because they are trying to live the word of God as they understand it as a Mennonite in the past. So for us in Latin America as Anabaptists, we have the same challenge, but not because our community don't allow us to continue our study. It's because the resources or incomes of the Mennonite families in the global souls don't allow to continue the studies. If I don't have the support of my parents to continue study, I was unable to be a physician on this day. Thanks to their sacrifice, I have the opportunity to continue serving as a physician. Perhaps you cannot see a very well picture because it's a very old. He was a little bit younger in that time. I take a picture of this with like a selfie, but in that time we don't have cell phones like right now. Then we can have a selfie. We even have the word selfie in that time. Well, so like Moses, sometimes we face challenges in our road to be a health professional. And I want to share with you a key verse of the Bible is in James 2:26. As a body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. This verse reinforces the idea of our faith must be visible through our actions. Health professionals who integrate their faith into their work demonstrates they are living faith to service to others. Kate is a real expert of integration of faith and in the medical field. She can talk a little bit more in some other of his experience. But I believe that if we continue the path of service, the path of Christian values, this will only connect to our technical and scientific studies and allow us to give a better service, not only in our practice, daily practice, in our community life, in the community of the churches, in the community where we belong. In this picture, you can see I am a little bit more mature here. We was with a friend called Eddie and the other friends called Samuel. And we make a medical journal in a community called Belén. It's like 10 hours from the Guatemala city into the jungle in a department called Alta Verapaz, in a municipal city called Coban. Wasn't any road to get there. We need to walk almost 3 hours and a half to reach this community and serve for a couple weeks as medical physicians to giving service. So I say each one of us is a little Moses too, because we are continued having challenges as Moses during his time of leadership. We are, like I said before, a little bit really revolutionary. Well, the best example that I have from MHF is his work in education, mentoring, and service mobilization. MHF, I understand, is not just a meeting space, it's but also a platform for continuing education, mentoring, and practical service. I understand they have very various programs that you know better than me that enables to members to continue growing both of clinical knowledges and capacity for compassionate service. Is it something that's happened today? Is many workers as health professionals, they have been deshumanized their service. They only focus the treatment in the disease, but not in integral or holistic way of treatment. I want that I take a couple minutes to you as Moses mobilized the Israelites to toward promised land. MHF mobilized health professionals to areas of need, allow them to serve in a highly vulnerable context, bringing not only physical relief, but also hope and spiritual healing. So I want each one of you to reflect on service. Please, each one of you reflect on how you can integrate your faith into your procession practice. Please, can you be an instrument of peace and service in your work, following an example of Moses? We can use the supporting verse, blessed are the peacemaker, for will be called children of God. Please, in this activity, reflect on how transformative is the role that we have and how can be agent of service, peace, and healing to those who we serve. I will give you a couple minutes to reflect on this, and I will give you a couple minutes of two of you to share how we can integrate and how Moses can be example of our life as healthcare service position. Now it's 11:30. We're going to talk 11:33. I will choose the participants, so be ready. I would like to use the democratic strategy. We have 1 minute more. I'm starting to look at who is going to participate with the lottery. Okay. The time, please, in a couple minutes, you have something to share, Joel Longetcher? No, it seems not. So we're going to choose some other volunteer to share. Wanda Tuma McDermott. Are you able to share?
Yes, sure. I was just going to try to put it into the chat. I'm not taking selfies. I am looking up the scriptures on my phone. Isn't that what we do nowadays?
Don't worry. 2 minutes, Wanda. Thank you.
Yeah. But I like the James 2:26 especially.
Okay.
Faith apart from works is dead. That you really need to do. I really firmly believe we need to do, along with our faith, and I like that verse.
Okay. Thank you, Wanda. Donna, can you share something, Donna Minter?
Yes. A couple of things. Over the last, 13 years, I'm a psychologist, and I saw in my community really a lack of understanding what psychological trauma is and how it impacts us both at the individual level, but then structural level, like institutional racism and sexism and that kind of thing. So I started a peace building institute here in Minneapolis that over the 13 years, I trained over 16,000 people with a training that was developed at Eastern Mennonite University, the STAR training. And then when I retired from that position and turned it over to somebody else, I was invited to help create a training based on the STAR training that focuses on climate anxiety and climate trauma. So I'm working, we did our first training this last June. And then and so that is going to be available online. I put it in the chat starting next year for other people that want to be a part of Climate Star. And then one of the things I'm working on now is, it was going to be this fall, but because my colleague had a serious accident, I'm going to be bicycling across the United States the goal is to raise $500,000 for climate justice organizations. I love to bike. Like Joe said, being out in nature and vigorous physical activity is one of the best ways to address mood difficulties and anxiety. As a psychologist, I know how prevalent that is, particularly in the face of the climate crisis. So, yeah, those are the ways that I'm integrating my call as a Christian into ways of making a difference in the broader community.
Thank you, Donna. We're going to choose one participant more. So, Grove, you want to share something?
Sure. My name is Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
I work at Esperanza Health Center in North Philadelphia. I'm a physician assistant. I'm lucky and blessed because my clinic is a Christian organization. And so patients come there knowing that the provider seeing them comes from a faith perspective. I will say I used to be more mindful of this, but I want to be more of trying to pray for a patient briefly before I enter the room. There are times where I have prayed with patients before, which is something that you can't do at every clinic. And I felt that it was a bit weird at first, but I realized that there is a huge lack of spiritual care in our culture, and that sometimes patients really is sometimes all that they need. They don't need another pain medication. They don't need being told to exercise more. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they need some acknowledgement that there is a God that loves them.
Thank you, Nicole. And one last participant. Mark Shelley, are you there? Are you able to share something?
Sure. I guess one of the things that I've been thinking about with all of this is that I'm in the middle of a relatively academic situation where, people are pretty well tossing around things like science, science, science. And I'm realizing there's a degree to which faith calls not instead of science, but beyond simply the least common denominator of how society is getting by. I think faith, as I experience it in the United States, often has something to do that I want to take a step back from others if they start to say they're bringing out their faith. But when we talk about some of the principles we've been talking about here, that's something that I want to take a step towards as far as faith. So it's this tension between do I lead with my caring, or do I lead with what I know? And I think that even though I'm very comfortable in the knowing world. I think this is encouraging me to entertain how I can show my caring.
Thank you, Mark. Do you know that MHF organizes educational events every year, like this annual gathering, where members can discuss issues as intersection of faith and healthcare? These spaces, I remind you, provide opportunities to reflect on ethical and practical questions in health care from the Christian perspective. Please invite others to participate in next events. Please continue participating. Please commit with MHF. In mentoring is an integral part of MHF, especially through the students' elective term or SET, which grants scholarships to students to study in development countries, where they not only learn but also practice their values of service. Please share the opportunities that MHF gives to others. Invite them to participate. Invite them to take off a time for service. So in this way, all our healthcare professionals won't have a spiritual death. Do you know that MHF is mobilized always for service? The Stephen Root Memorial Grant is a program, an example of how MHF helps its members to participate in medical missions in areas of need. These projects allow healthcare professionals to share their knowledge and skills while living their faith in action. The future of MHF leading toward to the promised land as Moses. Despite these challenges, Moses never lost his sight of God's promises for his people. For MHF, its commitment to continue to lead and out these healthcare professionals to our future with faith and medicine continue to be a meaningful integrate in a world is full of complexities as we are seeing today, from new pandemics to emerging ethical dilemmas, wars. MHS is well positioned to guide its members and new members through these challenges, like Moses did with his people. In the picture you are seeing there is a picture of my mother and of my brother and I. This was the first opportunity to do a surgery in the neck of a patient who have a tumor, a huge tumor. I don't know if you see the conditions and how we are operating these patients. Perhaps it's not the best condition to do a surgical condition. And perhaps Mark Shelley will say to us that we need to use a lot of antibiotics to protect this patient of infections. But about the resources, MHS, thank you to you, each one of the members, and other members have passed away. MHF have the possibility to continue blessing the life of others and continue be an extension of a Christian service. Here we was finished the procedures. It's a hard procedures we was setting. So I want to show you this one picture. This was one of my first clinics in the rural area where I was serving in a common Mennonite community that belongs to the Inengwa, to the Mennonite Mennonite Church. So in Isaiah 58, verse 11, the Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs and sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fails. In this verse, we reflect the role of the healthcare professionals who, with God's help, bring life and hope to places of suffering in need. Sometimes we need the suffer. Sometimes we need the needs, because if we have all covered, sometimes we're going to sin and forget from God. And something crossed to my mind what the three persons the opportunity to share with us. And it seems that sometimes we forgot that if we have the opportunity of be health professionals, our main obedience, our main obligations will be always be testimony of God in the place that we are. And I say this because in this picture, I am a bed of an hospitals a couple of years ago. Sometimes we forget as health professionals that to be a really good health care professional, sometimes we need to be a patient too. I don't know if you have been the opportunity to be a patient in a hospital, but when I was in child in the hospital, when I was one operation in my arm, when I was a grown man as health professional, I was giving thanks to God to have these professional health care services to bring me aid, because it's something that I know, and if something I understand when I was laying in that bed, is that sometimes as health professionals, we cannot take care of ourselves. So I want for one activity more to invite you to write in your cell phone, in a paper, in whatever means you have, write a personal commitment about how you can apply in your daily basis your Christian service. We're going to use for these reflections of commitment Matthew 25, verse 40. Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. Please take a couple minutes to write this commitment basis in this verse or reflected in this verse, to continue being and living your Christian service to your healthcare professional. 1 more minute. Please, this word you have been writing on, don't forget it. Save it in your mind and your heart. I want to share one last testimony. When I decided to study medicine, I wasn't sure to study medicine. I want to study for being a lawyer. I want to study to be an agronomist. But my father talked to me and he said something crossed my mind and my heart, and always something that I remind in daily basis. My father told me that I should study something for serve the people. That he remind me that I am privileged boy. And if I have the opportunity to study and finish medical or any university career, he remind me the most important of all is not the medical or the university career. The most important thing that for him was important was that I will have the opportunity to share the love, to share the gospel, to continue looking the kingdom of God. I'm trying to build it here and now. Because he said to me, because my father, he wasn't have the opportunity to study. He only get to 6th grade because the opportunities for him was limited. Because sometime in the future, when you have the opportunity to preach, the people will listen to you. So, as health professionals, we're going to have, as Nicole said, the opportunity in daily basis to do a little pray, to do a little preach, so the people don't forget the love of God to them. I share this testimony in the name of Christ. Amen. Thank you, each one of you, for listening to me, to give you the opportunity to share. And I hope you someday we can see us, not in virtually, in persons. And into that day, thanks for this opportunity. Kate, the time is with you.
See some clapping happening, and Joanne wrote in the chat, thank you for the spiritual inspiration and renewal, Dodanim. We have a few minutes before we transition to what we are calling our parking lot combo, which is just a chance to hang out and continue the conversation. But I want to give folks a chance to respond to what Dodanim has brought to us, to ask any questions you have of Dodanim, which can include questions about Global Anabaptist Health Network. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts, feel free to raise your hand or just jump in and share them.
This is Joe Longacre. Dodanim called on me at the end of his speech, and I talked for a minute or two, then I realized I was still muted. So what I would have said or did say was that I think that the goals, the two goals that he put on the screen were those that we as Christians share in whatever role we're in. And I think that MHS can remind us of the specific basic goal of all Christians, as well as think about how we in our individual career or vocation can find ways to do that. So thanks to MHF and to him for his presentation.
Thank you for sharing. I had something else I wanted to say too. Just as we're reflecting on being like Moses, Moses also took time to go up to the mountain and to be with God. And I think we have to be reminded to be rooted to the vine, because if we are going to be spiritual and physical leaders, we need to go up to the mountain to listen to God as well.
Nicole, I think that's a great point and connects to this question of one of the tensions. And tension isn't always a bad thing, right? Like there's a lot of things in the world that need tension. I always point to, it's my harp. There's enough tension in that harp that I could hang 3 cars off of it if it was flipped upside down. And it needs the tension. Like if the tension goes, the whole thing will break. So tension can be good, but one of the tensions I have between really thinking about how do we sacrificially serve in our healthcare careers, how do we go to great lengths like Moses did, and go up to the mountain to pray. But by that, I also mean, and not burn out, because I feel like I see folks in my generation really struggling with feeling a sense of calling, feeling a sense of wanting to do this as Christian service, and it just not being sustainable. And it's just a tension that I hold. I don't have any answers. Maybe Dodanim, you have some thoughts, or other people here. But yeah, how do we find that balance?
Well, I think I would just say that to remind us all that when we read the gospel, Jesus found he was worn out, but he also spent time in the wilderness out to reconnect with God. And so making sure that we all do that and find that balance so that we are at less where it'll work to build our resilience in many ways, spiritually and physically and mentally and emotionally, but also prepare us so then we're able to, when we go back into the challenges, we're much more able to do that.
Maybe actually this is where all of our talks come together. Literally going into the wilderness, going into nature is good for our health, and thus preserving it is good for our health. So multiple levels that these things, I think, can speak to each other.
You know, I still thinking back to when Joe was bashing the antidepressants, and having worked as a psychiatrist, I might get a little defensive, but I thought quickly after the most recent talk about an instance when I was finishing my psychiatry residency and I was working in a state hospital with the chronically mentally ill. And one of the things I determined to do was when I was on call, we were allowed to get our food from the dining room, but that I would take my food and eat with the patients rather than take it to my on-call room like most of the doctors did. And one time later, I was admitting a young lady who had been in the hospital, but I had never taken care of her. And I started to introduce myself. And she said, "Oh, I know you. You're the doctor that eats with us." And that touched my heart deeply, that of all the drugs I prescribed, maybe just eating with the person was as big a thing I could do for her healing as anything.
Herb, I hope you write a memoir someday, and I think it should be titled "The Doctor That Eats with Us." I think that's very powerful.
Actually, I just finished my autobiography, and I have to look to see if I put that story in.
I mean, this may not be the forum for it, but I sure would like to hear reflections from you at some point in some forum about what your way of delivering care in those settings, because I'm very struck by, surgery on a table with the desk lamp. What caring for people in that setting says to American industrialized medicine. I'm not suggesting that you don't need more resources, because I think you pretty clearly do. But I also wonder if learning to give care in those settings doesn't have an awful lot to teach us. And that might be one of the reasons why this organization SET program is so important, and why you need people going, is that being in a place and learning to give care that has very different resources and access is, I don't know. Anyhow, I don't know that this is the time or place, but I hope that there's going to be an occasion just to let you reflect on what it means to give care and how that might inform us and challenge us.
Well, you are more than welcome to come to Guatemala. We are a society with huge gaps. You can come to Guatemala and you can see a lot of people with a lot of resources living in luxury. And you can see the other extreme with the people that I share my time. We don't have just for one meal a day, don't have for paying a medical consultation. And of course, I have patients who can pay all that I ask for them, that do this lab test, do these studies, do this, check, buy this medicine. We can see this all the day, every day. And for me, sometimes it's frustrating because, one person pay me one day giving me a chicken. And I was like, well, not insulting or something like that. I was like, well, but if this is your meal of your day someday, or did this chicken give you eggs every day, what you're giving to me? And these patients tell me, because I want to recognize all the effort you have done for me. And that's broke my heart, because in so many ways, I'm privileged. The pictures you see of me in the presentation, I'm skinny. And right now, a little bit fatty. And this is other of the huge complexity of my society here, that I have the privilege to have 3 meals every day, and eat a little bit more, have some McDonald's or Coke in the nights to see patient the night shift. And that's why I'm fat too, because I don't have a lot of time, like Kate said at the beginning. And so, like I said before, sometimes we need always to get confronted about the reality of every day, to see the work of God. And sometimes for us is the call that we have in the in the choose that we have made as healthcare professionals, that to serve others. So our main goal, like I say in the testimony of my dad, wasn't to get the best salaries, to get more comforts. It's just the opportunity of God to serve others in his name. That's the knowledge that we have received. Like my father's always tell me, my father was the first preacher always in the time in the house. He always preaching to me. And he say, if you look the kingdom of God, the other stuff will become add. So if we are looking the kingdom of God and building him, our needs will fill, and this will be allowed us to serve others. I don't have a response about to be resilient or to take care by our own life. Perhaps I'm not the best example of that. I have like, I don't know, 12 years that I don't have vacations with my family. So my dad always working. He died working. My mom is always busy. Now he's studying psychologist to serve people. So I'm not the best example of self-care, but I believe always God give us the way of dealing with all the burden we receive sometimes. Because if God don't believe that we have the strength to do the challenge, he won't give us the opportunity to serve. So I believe each one of you have the strength to continue being the instrument of God every day in your daily work basis.
Thank you so much, Dodanim. It strikes me too, to this question, both Joe and Dodanim, that, you know, our conversation about how sometimes rather environmentally and resource intensive tests and things are used, you know, so often that there's something to training in an area that doesn't necessarily have the resource intensive technology that can help, you know, folks who are training to be able to use less intensive methods in certain ways, right? And so I think there's a multiple sort of layers of this that also connect back to the climate piece. And then, yeah, the self-care piece, it's really tough. And Dodanim, your kids are insanely adorable. So I really do want you to spend lots of time with them. Well, this marks our sort of closing of what we're calling the very formal part. Well, the informal formal part of annual gathering this year. Tomorrow morning, we have a special invitation, as has been in the written communication, to join North Baltimore Mennonite Church. There will be 2 links that you'll get in an email after this. The first is the official link to join North Baltimore. Tomorrow, they are having Jeannie Davis from Anabaptist Disabilities Network speak, which we really feel like dovetails so well with this whole conversation because ethics around disability and inclusion are just such a huge thing. And I think theology around these pieces that I don't know that our churches are really engaging with in a very deep way. And so we're so excited that North Baltimore has invited her, and we are invited to join that service. After the service, there's an official talk back time where people who are on Zoom as well as in person can ask questions or give reflections on the service. After that point, there's another link. Andrew will be giving it to you again tomorrow, but I'll give it to you today, that just MHF folks can also join a separate room to continue the conversation and have some talk back. We wanted to facilitate kind of a hybrid way of connecting tomorrow. North Baltimore Mennonite Church is Joanne Hunsberger's home church. It was Andrew Metzler's home church while he was training in Baltimore. So it's nice to have those connections. That's what's happening tomorrow. From here, in the big sense, I know that I certainly hope that all of these conversations from last night and today are continued in various ways across MHF, whether through these regional gatherings, through further virtual gatherings, in your own homes and communities. Please do not hesitate to reach out if there are things that you think MHF could do for you in your community, as well as continue to come to us with your thoughts about our own engagement, how we can engage folks at all sort of stages of healthcare service, whether that's undergraduate students through folks who are semi-retired. As I said earlier, I don't know that there's that many people at all within MHF, no matter what the age, that are fully retired and not actually still doing some kind of healthcare service. I just continue to hear about wonderful things that folks are doing. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And this is also the point in the weekend where I have to say MHF very much relies on your membership contributions, and even more so on your extra contributions. We have been slowly moving to the idea of monthly contributions. If we had 10 folks who were able to give $100 a month to MHF, it would make a very significant difference in our sense of security month to month. If we could have 20 folks giving that $100 a month, it would make a huge difference. If we could have 50 folks, that would just completely transform. We would be able to hire more staff and do even more. But I really want to start with that 10 because I think there are 10 of you here right now. Some of you here are giving $100 a month, but I just want to say that that would be huge for us. We talk a lot about really amazing ideas for MHF and the fact that I think everyone here deeply believes MHF still brings a huge amount of value. These are unique conversations that aren't necessarily happening openly in lots of other spaces. And we really do want to bring this into more spaces, into more homes, offer more SCT scholarships, do some international learning tours like we did to Guatemala last year. We have a lot we want to do, and we are limited by our staff capacity, which is actually a financial capacity limitation. We really do need to either expand some hours or shift things around so that we can hire someone in for communications and some other things. And that's going to require more staff time, which requires more support. So please do consider supporting us. And please, if you want to know how to do that, please email me. Or many of you already do support us. We are also looking at, we haven't made a decision, moving our fiscal year instead of being school year based to being January 1st based. One of the most consistent bits of sort of feedback we get is that people don't know when their membership has expired and to renew. And so to move to January 1st would make that a little bit easier. But if we do that, we're going to have a significant gap in financing for these last couple of months of the year. So I'm also asking if folks are able in this year, when we might make that transition, to give some extra support. We would really appreciate it. So with that, thank you so much for being here. I am going to stop the